Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. It is Monday. We're going to kick it off with a new theme, this one being an exploration of a band's evolution that I've titled Then versus Now. We're going to be looking at an older track from a band and a newer track from a band and kind of seeing how the band has changed or evolved or even just decided to do something completely different. It doesn't need to be a linear evolution as much as it could just be, hey, this band started out playing death metal and now they play pop music. Which I'm pretty sure I've heard of that before. I just can't. Oh no, you know what it was? It was black metal to like synth pop. And I can't remember the name of that band, but we've checked them out before. Anyways, though, all that aside, we're checking out some Porcupine Tree today. Now, this is a track called Always Never, but it might not be from the album you expect it from. This is the 1995 version that came off of Stars Die. It was a bonus track on that album before being reworked and released on a future album. Let's dive in, see what Porcupine Tree has for us for today. There's some chords in here that introduce a bit of vastness, but it's also based off of something very bluesy. And I think the acoustic guitar really leans into that. Kind of spacey here, that's... Ooh, very spicy on that ascending pattern. Some interesting textures on the outside. I like the bass tone here in the middle. So the chimes kind of give me a twinkling vibe, mixing with the vast opening and the spacey guitar solo. It definitely continues to capture very astral sounds.
It's growing cold. I'm growing old. Is this the only way to see the fire? It's raining.
Chill, kind of laid back even. I like the percussiveness of the acoustic guitar underneath all of that. All right. Yeah, this is interesting. As much Porcupine Tree as we've listened to on the channel, I can't say that I've heard anything from them that wears their classic prog rock inspirations on their sleeve as much as what we just listened to. This feels like it has the spacey, psychedelic vastness of Pink Floyd, and I think that the frequent solo sections kind of lean into that as well. It lacks what I kind of view as as Porcupine Tree's main defining quality, which is almost something a bit more post-rock with their adherence to atmosphere over everything else. This certainly has atmosphere for days in it, but it's also more focused on melodic ideas, and I think Porcupine Tree, at least what I've listened to from them, typically focuses on. They certainly still have guitar solos in their later music, but I don't know, something about this just feels like it looks back more than it looks within. And I find that to be an interesting sort of revelation, seeing where Porcupine Tree started, where they came from. It definitely feels like a Porcupine Tree track. You can see how they've evolved from this sound, how they've taken this idea of atmosphere with emotion and really focusing on those two and running with it and honing it over the decades of making music. As for this track itself, though, it's very spacey. I found this to be interesting that it's rather consistent with this open vastness. Right from the beginning, we have some sort of bluesy chords on an acoustic guitar, but every once in a while we have these expansive chords, ones that don't necessarily speak about tension or resolve, but about possibility. These chords feel like the song could go, honestly, in any direction. And I quite enjoy kicking the song off with this combo. Blues tends to be very internal, introspective. It's about sorrow. It's a universal emotion, sure, but a lot of bluesy tracks are about how I am personally feeling or engaging with sorrow. Or maybe from a narrator's perspective, this person is engaging with sadness or grief or whatever. It's very rarely used as a general, we are all grieving, we are all sad sort of theme. Blues tends to be more personal. It's interesting then to mix that with this sound of possibility, of vastness, of a much larger scope of things. To take this idea and extrapolate it into this space rock sound, bringing in these cool reverberary sounds, continuing to focus more on those expansive, vast, and I was going to want to use a word to describe the feeling of awe, but instead of awesome, my brain said it should be awful, full of awe, right? Human brains, man. They're not always what they're cracked up to be. Anyways, yes, focusing on this vastness and this awesomeness. Where was I going? Oh yeah, the spacey sounds. This is a very cool idea in general. It feels like space rock. It's moving from that intro idea rather well. And then we continue to push the song into these directions. The two solo sections are filled with space and a sort of melancholic reverence. I don't know why I was going to add an extra syllable in there. I might just need to take a pause break here and let my brain reboot. It feels like it wants to capture this feeling of a longing sadness for something that we'll never see, something that will never be. To look up into the stars and realize that it's impossible to know all that's out there. To be in awe of that, but also to be a little sad about it. It's too infinite to grasp. But I'd really like to. And that dissonance between wants and reality create this bluesiness, this sorrow. At least that's what I get from a lot of this song emotionally. It is this really interesting midpoint between more sorrowful and sad moments, not necessarily depressive or mournful, but just a feeling of missing out, missing something, incompletion, I suppose, feeling incomplete, paired with this expansive sounds, full of possibility. In a sense, Porcupine Tree here has created musical FOMO. Can't believe I've said that. I'm in a weird mood today, apparently. All right, the emotional side of things. There's also a very cool flow, contrast, movement throughout this track. You may have noticed over there, and you may have even noticed with your ears, this song can get very quiet. I really appreciate that. So much music is compressed and normalized to a point that your quiet and your loud sections are all the same volume. And this song doesn't go in that direction. It ensures that the quieter, more introspective, less layered sections are legitimately lower volume than the bigger, expanded, layered, bombastic. Well, bombastic's a weird word for this. There's definitely peaked moments as far as energy and volume, but I don't think any of this qualifies as bombast. There's not really much spectacle going on in this track. And I find that to be another interesting thing too, that despite the highs and the lows, the big difference in volume and intensity and layering in these moments, it never really feels large. Despite the vastness of scope, it never really gets to that larger than life, over the top feeling. It never gets heightened. And I really love that because it brings us back to this grounded personal introspection. And maybe this is why the bluesy element works so well with the Spacier side. It's not necessarily about internal versus external, but about scope of internal struggles. It turns into a reflection of the size of these wants and needs and emotions tied to the difference between what you actually get and what you actually want. Interesting. Maybe even the highs and the lows can lean into that as well, as the introspective versus the vast is a rather large gap. We also have a rather large gap between our lowest points and our highest points. This is just another way to feed into the spaciousness of this track and how much room it can take up and also it can leave behind. Aside from that, I find the general production to be well done for 1995. Doesn't surprise me given that I'm sure Steven Wilson had some sort of hand in it. I don't know when he necessarily began to develop a strong ear for production, but as good as his production is these days, I kind of assume he's always had a good ear for it, even if maybe he didn't know specifically the tools and processes to craft a good production. Probably still had an ear for it at the time. This doesn't sound like it's from 95 is what I'm saying here. It feels more modern than that. But I also appreciate the bass tone. I appreciate the spaciousness of this track. The volume even kind of ties into the production a little bit. And finally, even the chimes in here. I think that's a fantastic way to kind of tie up as we move into the outro of this song, of bringing in this twinkling sound. Once again, seeming like stars, a spaciness, a vastness, something that's been consistent throughout the track in a variety of different ways. The intro feels different than the verses and choruses, which feel different than that final 3 to 4 minute more space guitar solo exploration stuff. We do come back to a quasi verse for a brief time in the middle between two solo moments, but the ending sounds very different from the verse chorus section, and that feels very different from the intro, but it's all tied together in a way that makes sense. The production keeps it consistent, the instrument choices keep it consistent, and ultimately that feeling of a vast sorrow is felt in every moment of this song. So it's another way that it kind of ties everything together despite what feels to me like 3 distinct movements in this song. Let me hit some lyrics on this, then we're going to wrap it up. All right, just to preface this, I am looking at the lyrics from the version that came from the Up the Down Stair album, not the one from the Stars Die album. I couldn't find ones that specifically mentioned it came from Stars Die, so I don't know how close to this the lyrics are. Maybe there is a couple of word changes, maybe an extra stanza placed somewhere, but generally speaking, I went and played this back to the music and it seemed accurate in the parts that I remembered there being vocals, which, like I mentioned, isn't a lot. We got a verse chorus thing at the beginning and then a little return to a verse between solos. Regardless, it seems to be about a song. It seems to be a song about two people where our narrator is emotionally distancing themselves and closing themselves off from the other person for some reason. I don't know. Verse 1 says, I feel no pain because I'm an island. I will remain in the deafness of your silence. Now, the idea of remaining as an island in the deafness of silence absolutely sells some of the isolation I felt in this. There's also a large amount of sorrow in here, despite the fact that this person seems to be separating themselves emotionally. It's still not a happy event. Most people don't close themselves off because they're elated and filled with joy, and there's just too much good stuff in their life. They just got to shut down their emotions a little bit. Um, So, yeah, I like this line though. In the deafness of your silence, I remain an island. And that's just, it's powerful poetry right there. Verse 2 says, I feel no gain when you're around me. I'll try again. In the darkness, you astound me. Once again, speaking about the separation between these two people, our narrator says that they don't feel like there's any personal benefit to themselves in any way being around this other person. However, the chorus tells a slightly different story. There's some interesting wording in here, and I don't think I get it 100% because it seems counterintuitive. But it says, I love you sometimes, always never. He said, you're here with me now. I love you sometimes, always, never. You dropped every single time frame there is, the two absolutes and right in the middle. What does that mean? Unless it's just supposed to be about the confusing element of their relationship. I mean, the verses show someone who shut themselves off from the other person. This seems like they don't necessarily love them if they're being emotionally cold to them. But maybe sometimes they can re-engage their emotions. Maybe sometimes the relationship works. But then you have always, never, which is a very interesting double because they're both absolutes. And if you read that, you absolutely never. A totality of neverness, which is already a totality. I think if nothing else, this speaks to a vastness of a disconnect between these two people. But what throws me off is the sometimes, always, never. So sometimes I don't love you at all in the slightest, but sometimes I do. I don't know. It's confusing, and maybe that's purposeful. Maybe the word choice here is to create something that's a bit confusing. Maybe the narrator themselves doesn't even really understand the relationship they have with this person. The bridge says it's growing cold and I'm growing old. Is this the only way to see the fire? And I think that's interesting. I mean, on the one hand, contrast, right? This is something I talk about in music. If you want your tens to hit like tens, you need to drop that intensity down. Intensity. You need to bring it down though, so that we can come back to that feeling again. Well, does that work in love? If fire is a representation of how strong a relationship is, the best way to understand that isn't by comparing it to fire, but by comparing it to the cold. If there's a separation emotional between these two people and they reignite that flame, it's going to feel more powerful than ever. This could be about a relationship that's just, it's in the ruts, man. It's not going to work out, but sometimes it feels like it does by sheer contrast, not because it actually is working though. At least that's how I read this track. It's rather vague. I mean, we have a whole 16 lines of lyrics. So I do think it captures a feeling though of isolation, of lost in a very large world, maybe feeling sorrow in a very large capacity, but being alone, being shut off. The vastness, I think, is interesting because I was talking about a want, what you get, what your reality is, and what you want out of it. And it does seem like this person wants this relationship to work, but it doesn't. And it creates this gulf between these two people. Maybe even some of that spacey soloing stuff is daydreaming in a sense, a pondering of things that could be better. What if, in a different world, different time, different set of events? These are my thoughts, though. Porcupine trees, always, never. What did you think of this? Is there anything that stood out to you? Anything that you would like to add on to what I said or correct me on? Maybe you have your own interpretation of this track. Please let me know. Put all of that and any other thoughts you have down into the comment section below. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. Takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. That wraps it up for today. I'll be back tomorrow, though, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.